Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I am your Sensei Al Bob, your griot, here to tell you a story. And don't believe a word I say. Rah. Oh, there's MJ. So, MJ, tell me, what do you feel is going on? Um, do you feel this presence of a higher power within inside you? Does it give you the strength to look yourself in the eye to eye, to make you realize that you are not your 3D puppet, that you're not your bag of water, you're not even your soul? You feel love's co creation, that spirit, that is the burning bush, the work in progress. You see that we are right on the edge in that Venn diagram between the Piscean age and the Aquarian age, where we are stepping forth into a new world, where we will not allow ourselves to be manipulated by violence and hate and greed and ignorance. You feel that, MJ? And if you do, can you share with us how you feel? And anyone else out there in chat land? It's interesting. Every time I do a chat um, and I sign off, it gives me the numbers, how many people watched, for how long, etc. And every time I go, and that is before it gets um, put up on my channel. And every time I go on the channel, it shows that I am, half the people that it said watched, it says watched, and half the likes that were, there when I left. Like last night, there were 7 likes, and there were only a few. Let's see. Yes, not baggy puppet. I feel quality from Quantum Love's co-creation. Exactamundo. So that is the state that all spirit is in, right? And for a million years, once we got stuck in this bag of water, which is basically, we live in a prison planet, and that small group of people who can only manifest fear and anger and war that are possessed by Aries, that not so much Aries, the astrological sign, but Aries, the god of war. And a good example of this possession is the first Wonder Woman a movie, right? And Diana is the perfect representation of what MJ just says. She is not a baggy puppet, and she lives in the quantum space of love's co-creation. And you can see that scene where she goes with her pilot boyfriend, who she's just starting to realize that she hadn't been around guys ever, and now she's got this guy. And yes, he's a moron, but he's a true blue moron. He's like a righteous guy. She realizes it. She feels it. That is what the twin flame's about, right? And so she feels that in her, right? And so she goes to London, and he's, a spy for all of those, bankers, who are creating war and profit. And he brings the news that this breakaway civilization that is representing as the Kaiser is ready to unleash a weapon they have no defense against, right? And so they're told not to do anything about it, but they go anyway. And so they get into France and then move towards the line. And as they do, there's throngs of all the innocent folk streaming away from the war line, and they're all suffering, and people being carried away in stretchers, and people crying and suffering, as it ever was, and they didn't start this war. They haven't manifested this war. They didn't want this war. They, came to their land, and it destroyed it. And World War One, they had was trench warfare, and there's this line going across it. And today we're having the same thing in the Ukraine, right? And there's a line between the breakaway version of Ukraine and then Russia, and there's this line, and and thousands of people have died, but there is no real war. But it's feeding that entity of hate and ego, and fear. And that's what the human soul has been manipulated by. We're in, the 3 films of The Matrix try to describe, and they did a fair job of what we're going through. And, but when the hero, like Prometheus, or, Jason or the Argonauts, going after the fleece. These were heroes, people who sacrificed themselves for the betterment of man. Well, in reality, their ego was leading them to do that. They wanted notoriety, right? We don't have to do that. All we have to do is love ourselves and each other, and in every day and every way, do better. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the hero. You just do better. And right now we're surrounded by all of these things, basically since Christopher Columbus, North America has been, and I hate using the term North America, but this part, right, New Atlantis, let's call it, because Old Atlantis fell into the Caribbean, and it's going to come back up. It already is. And that's one reason why we have had this conflict with Cuba. Because if Cuba was free and open, people would have discovered Atlantis long ago, right? But, Castro actually went there representing, because you have to realize the KGB, CIA, same thing. It's part of Hail Hydra's, and every, the Mossad, the French, the English, they all are this intelligence mentality that's, and everything represented by governments are the opposite. So when this is the intelligence, or that means the stupidest people are working there. And back in the day, we used to call it the War Department. At least that was honest. Now we call it the Defense Department. If there is no defense, we have nobody even close. The only people who can hurt us is ourselves. North Korea, those people are basically starving. They maybe have 5 or 6 deliverable ICBMs. They don't have the military-industrial complex to be a threat. And Russia, during the Cold War, we had to constantly help them out. And Russia did the same thing. Like the F-117 came straight from Russian. This guy who was in the Russian aviation industry, who was a great mathematician, he designed a concept of flight, of stealth flight, and he had an equation, and it was, in the 60s, it was published all over the place, but no one had the computers to really figure out what it was. But somebody at Lockheed said, "Oh, look at this," and they used it, just plugged it into their computer, bango, they got the Blue Diamond, right? Which was the test bed of stealth. And back in the day, Mr. Norton, the Northrop aircraft, built in the 40s a flying wing that was so aerodynamically pure. I mean, it was a better aircraft than the flying wing we have. The B-1, this thing is a B-2. It's nothing compared to what Norton and Northrop built it. Northrop Grumman, Grumman acquired Northrop. And basically, the B-2 bomber is not a bomber of aerodynamics. It is basically a flying saucer. It's propelled by gravimetrics and gravo energetics to make it very light. And so if you have an aircraft that displaces 120 tons, and it really only weighs 300 pounds, it can fly around the world 40 times on whatever fuel it is and go pretty fast, especially if you have a magnetic field all around the shell, the surface of the aircraft. Thus, there is no friction. And it also makes it invisible to radar. And back in the day when they built the first flying wing, Northrop, that aircraft had unbelievable flight characteristics and a very, when they shined radar onto that aircraft, it looked like it was a bird. And then what did we, the Air Force said, oh, we'll take 500 of these. And then the people in Congress blackmailed a number of folk, and they canceled that aircraft and forced Northrop to destroy all the plans and jigs for building that aircraft. Just like General Motors destroyed all of the plans and jigs of the original Volt, which was an amazing car, built in the 70s. Now they can't build, every Volt they try and build, basically catches fire, because they want to bring on Tesla's wireless transmission. He developed free electricity and wireless transmission of electricity in the 1880s in his Colorado Spring experiments. And so my experience, at 9, my mom walked me down 3rd Avenue, walked me into Mike Stoll's shop. Do something with this boy. Mike had 5 daughters, didn't have any sons. I became his son. Mike Stoll was more my father than my dad. He was more concerned about my well-being, how I felt, everything about me he was concerned about. My father my father asked me at 6, who are you? I don't know you. You don't belong here. He said that to me, Luckily, I grew up with my grandma, who taught me to think about everything that happens to me rather than to act emotionally. So when my father said that, who I really had nothing to do with, I said, what's wrong with this asshole? He's got a problem, and I don't give a fuck. And I just said, okay, whatever. And, I was very, I watched my father screaming and yelling and out orders, and my brothers and sisters, I'm not going to do that. And they'd have big fights. Me, I said, yes, sir, right away, sir. Go up, and run away. And I do whatever the heck I wanted to do. It wasn't until I was 52 that my father actually realized that that's what I was doing. That's how aware my dad was, So we're right here at this very interesting point in time, which we've been at for the last 160,000 years. But with as Shakespeare said, there's more going on in the stars than is in your history. We're coming up to a very interesting point. With the end of the Mayan calendar, we basically we're no longer in the Piscean age. We're now 100% in the Aquarian age, but we're being forced into this violence through the inertia of the Piscean age, which won't really stop being until 2036, give or take. But for every second that we don't let go of that anxiety, what makes you anxious? Why, what's your problem? Let it go. It doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is love's co-creation. And until you can love yourself and then love others, not going to work. And if you latch on to, this person's going to save me, or that person, if you're looking for a hero, no. The only hero in your life is you. And you have to, and the more you get full of yourself, the more you're going to hit a concrete wall, right? The more you're going to do stupid things. You're going to go out and get drunk and get a DUI. No, you don't want to do that, right? Don't even, I don't drink more than 1 or 2 drinks a day. And, the space between that and the next time I drink, I don't drink 1 or 2 drinks every day. No, Last time I had a drink was about 4 weeks ago, and last time I had a drink before then was about a year and a half. Now, I live out in the woods. Unless I go out of my way to buy a bottle of something, and I had, as an electrician, one of the traditional, especially in New York City, one of the traditional things that you give your electrician is, because he's your electrician, he's working for you on jobs that cost hundreds of thousands, or at least $10,000 or $20,000. Even if you're just like building a little shack or house, it can get expensive. Just today, I went and fixed someone's lights, right? Because they were a neighbor, and they helped the lady who I'm staying up their farm, and like pass it on. I said, "Oh, let's see what's I heard you got a problem. Well, let's see it." And I looked at it, and I took care of it. And what do I owe? I said, nothing. He said, I tried to get an electrician, and they wouldn't even come. And they said if it did, just to show up would be $500. I said, no, you don't have to give me anything. Just take care of my friend. That's how it works. And he said, you're a good man. So, and I enjoyed doing that. And I listened to his stories, and I told him stories, and as I worked, and he was amazed that, like, if I just hadn't been talking, I would have fixed his thing. I did fix his thing in about 10 minutes. I mean, figured out what was wrong, and no one could figure out why it didn't work, right? And what they were trying to do was make it work the way it used to work, but it went through a device that had totally given up the day. So all I did was cut out the device, the controller, and wired it to the switches that were there, and everything worked, Duh. But the person who said, oh, I'm an electrician, said, oh, it's this little gizmo thing. We have to get a new one of these. And they actually did get one of those. But it wouldn't work because other parts of the problem were there. So they didn't even know that there were other parts of the problem. And I said, okay, we're not going to use this. We're just going to wire the lights to the switch and the fan to the switch. And there were two switches, one for a fan and one, and I could choose one speed. So I picked a medium speed for the fan to go around. And so now when he puts on, it does a medium speed, and the lights work, and all is good. And I did that in less than 15 minutes, right? And he was like amazed, right? And first I made sure that the circuits through the whole house, everything worked. We checked all that out. And it was like, he just couldn't believe it, wow, And I was still telling him a lot of stories. Anyway, so, back in the day when I had a business, I would get cases of booze. I mean, really good booze. I mean, good Irish whiskey, good, good wine, good, and I still, in the deep green, have cases of the stuff, right? So I haven't really had to buy any wine or liquor in the last 40 years. I still have that, I still have a case or two of Paddy's and a few other Canadian malt liquor, and a few other good tasting things, and that's what it's about. It's not about having stuff. It's about enjoying your life. So I'll have a glass of whiskey or wine, and enjoy it. But I don't drink a whole bottle, or I don't drink enough to get drunk. I don't need to. If I want to get a buzz, all I have to do is go into state, go into my sanctuary of my own choosing. And in that, there are places all through it. There's the carnival. There is the Great Lawn, the Great Lake, the gazebo. There are many, many places I can go to and then walk into an environment where, it would be like the 70s show, where they sat around in a circle, a smoky room, and as the camera went around, people got stupider and stupider. And that's what drugs do. It makes you stupid. And even drugs that are supposed to heighten your awareness, no, they make you stupid, because you don't need to take that drug to be aware. All you have to do is be aware, right? And one reason why not many people watch this is because my stories and my being the shamanic griot is that all I have to do is I am putting shamanic energy into the World Wide Web. You are receiving it from this. And even if you're not, everyone who goes on the internet is receiving it, right? I don't control it. Love's co-creation controls it. I'm just a co-creator of it. What are we? We are the deciders. I've decided to be awake and consciously intent. And my conscious intent is to take the piece of the earth in every day and every way of my life and make it stronger through graceful service to love's co-creation. And that's what my life's about. Every second of my life, this second to the next second, to the next second, to the next second, it's what it is. And now I'm of an age, and I have, put my body through a lot. It's amazing. I mean, most of my doctors say it's amazing you're alive, And so that's where it's at. So MJ, you still on board? There's still one person there. You still there, girl? Oh, so how do you, in every day, in every way, take the piece and make it stronger? And I'm asking everyone who watches this show, I'm asking everyone who's on this planet to your life is not about you. It's about the we and me. Now, when I was in first grade, a nun murdered me, crushed my esophagus, broke my jaw, broke this orbit, and broke the little bone in my ear. So this doesn't hear to spec, but it hears better because I hear other frequencies. Good girl. And it allows me to hear what people not think, but they're, certain frequencies, I can hear them, I can hear them. And I can hear people from long ways away. Some architects realize the acoustic presence of this. And there's like a train station in Rhode Island, in the capital of Rhode Island, their train station or bus station. It's a station, I know that. And it's a big, big round dome. And then it's got other things attached to it. But this big, and everyone sits and waits in there. And the 360 degrees around that, if you're sitting over here, you can hear what someone 100 yards away on the other side of the dome is talking to a friend next to them. You can hear their conversation. And it's very fun. And that's how you can, when you're in state, you can get that kind of information, just and with this breath, you say, conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am. Om. The intent is to connect your prana self, coming through you. Yeah, I like Terence McCurry. I've read his books. I don't have. I've seen, a couple of his YouTubes. But McKenna, anybody who basically, I like him. I like what he says. And I get this feeling that he's not saying I'm right, but people who listen to him think that he's right. He's just putting forward some interesting theories and talking about certain processes, right? And he's just trying to say, hey, this is one tool in the toolbox, not the beyond and end all, right? And he also kind of is saying, hey, you can do this yourself, And so that's why I like him. But the mythology that's grown up around him and the fact that people use his writings and as a vehicle to give themselves permission to waste their own time, right? And so he's not saying go waste your time doing drugs. He's saying this is a tool in the toolbox and that you shouldn't get stuck on it. right? But it is a tool to break. It's like, the ice is there, and sometimes you can brush it away. Sometimes you can let your intent melt it away, but sometimes you need to get the shovel out and the hammer and break the ice before you can get rid of it. So depends on how stuck you are. Back in the day, when I worked for a psychotherapist back in the 60s at the VA, when I was getting my MSW and developing protocols for PTSD before anyone called it PTSD, we used psychotropic drugs. We were at, what's the name of that university in New York? Well, we used it at the Rockefeller Foundation, and the other one, the guys who are going on and on about COVID, who are always, they're keeping the statistics on it. John Hopkins. Those two people, and I worked for those guys on lots of different things. But this one, we were building protocols to help deal with real people who are in shock, basically. And we found that using psychotropic drugs, that in very minute amounts and not a lot of times, but specifically at certain, in the protocol that we developed, along with group therapy and other, yoga and qigong, did a lot, and along with, we had this large protocol of many, many different things because everybody's different. So we had a protocol that had many different things, and some worked better for this person and some worked better for that person, but we had them all, and together they worked extremely well, along with acupuncture. There's a point in your ear, guys who come back strung out on heroin, we just put a earring in this point where they were that would get rid of the chemical addiction, or at least block certain hormones and other things in your brain from wanting the addiction, right? And with therapy, we could get through it, right? But the federal government didn't want to do that. What they wanted to do is give everyone methadone. And methadone was a drug that the Nazis invented, and they called it L-dopamine, and they didn't have enough sick people to run all the horrific things they were doing, bureaucratically. So they got people hooked on methadone. Once it's in your brain, you can never not be addicted to methadone. Heroin, OxyContin, opiates of any type, you can get off of, but methadone, not so much. So you have to, you can't get the methadone, and see, it doesn't get you stoned, but if you don't get your shot, you crawl the walls. That's what it was designed to do. So we developed this protocol of acupuncture and psychotherapy to deal with stress and trauma of Vietnam and drug addiction. And we did a protocol for a whole 3 years and showed how great it worked and how, economic, it cost all of about $600 a year per person, which is nothing compared to what the pharmaceutical bill would be. And it would cure them for life. And basically, my boss was assassinated. He was a bird colonel, and he was driving to D.C. to be in front of Congress, and he was run off the road on 95 between New York and D.C., and then the guys got out of the car to see if he was dead, and because he wasn't dead, they put a bullet in his brain. And the report came back from where they did it was in the Defense Department, Maryland's Office of Special Weapons. That's where his autopsy was done. Not back. They could have sent him back to our hospital, and we would have done it. We had an ME there. No, but this guy was definitely intelligence, and you have to realize that the cabal, it's not the deep state alone. All these people going on about the deep state. No, that's more like the mercantile municipal. It's like the garbage man. That's the deep state, right? you have to look at the problem, at least politically, socially, economically, environmentally. You have to look at that problem through three lenses. You have to look at it through the UFO motif, the intelligence, the CIA, the military-industrial complex, and the deep state. And the deep state is the administrative. It's the we have the best legislators money can buy. The intersection of the corporate structure, which is when you have corporations owning the country. You look it up in the dictionary. That's fascism. Now, socialism is kind of what we have. Crony capitalism. That's socialism. Of course, all the money goes to the crony capitalists, not to people. The crumbs that they get is, that's trickled down, right? Crumbs that they get are just to keep them from, it's bread and circus. That's what the Romans had, right? And the Roman Empire fell not just because of the, welfare state. I mean, that was like 1/10 of 1% of their GDP. No, but they had this mammoth military-industrial complex and armies all across the empire, and that's what bankrupted them. And what they did, it basically, they didn't send Romans everywhere to conquer things. No, they went into a country with a army of mercenaries, and they set them up on the hill, and they said to that king, okay, listen, if you don't do what we say, we're going to bring this in and kill everyone. But if you join our empire and give us 40% of the take, you keep the other 60, that army is yours, right? And we'll pay for half of it, right? And when we need them, we can call on them, but it'll be your army, right? You can kill whatever enemy you want. And that's what America's doing now. Our biggest thing that is in our GDP, the thing we make most money out is weapons. The thing that we give away as foreign assistance is weapons. All of Africa is covered with mines, and the only country that made them in that period was us. And we spread them everywhere because it made us money. And this is what is the problem. But very simple. If everyone just, like me, right now I'm on the BOP, so I'm spending money, every nickel I have just to be on the BOP. Back when I was in the deep green, I just spent about $400 and would save as much as I could. And so I'd always have a little, pillow there. Now I don't have that pillow. Right now I could really use some cash because it's the beginning of the month and I have nothing in the bank. And so that's the story. You can go to PayPal and get a hold of me at thedudewake42@gmail. That's the email address. And when you go into PayPal and say, hey, we want to give we want to give some money to this guy, it's thedudewake42@gmail. thedudewake42@gmail. And get a hold of me there, and we can have a personal conversation. If you live in America, we can talk on the phone. If you have WhatsApp and you're in a foreign land, we can talk on that. A lot of people. There are about it's interesting that my I used to be at 500. Now I'm at 430 or 40 or something. And it's obvious, so they're not getting rid of me off of YouTube, but they're keeping me at the bottom. And I don't know if anyone knows this. There's this thing, oh, you're at the bottom of the totem pole. Did you know that the individual who's at the bottom of the totem pole is the foundation of everything? It's the most honored place to be, the bottom of the phone. So when people say, oh, you're at the bottom of the totem pole, well, thank you very much. And I'm doing this not for, fame and fortune. When I ask you to throw something my way on PayPal, it's because, I got nothing. I mean, zero, zilcho. But I still live like a millionaire, It always works out. It's not a problem. You can either be part of that, throw a few dollars. Somebody, a few people have sent me $10. A few people have sent me 17, 20, 50. Well, that's fine. A few people have sent me a couple hundred. That's very nice, Whatever you want to send through PayPal to me is truly appreciated. And also, it goes to me being able to talk to you guys, right? So that's the story. And I'm going to go, let's see, it's 35 minutes. When it hits 35 minutes and 35 seconds, I'm going to go have dinner. So, and then I'll be back. Right now it is, what time is it? It's 5:11. So somewhere between 7 and 8, I will come back. Right? Okay. And I always suggest you guys to go look at dark journalism. Don't believe a word he says, but it's really, he has a lot of interesting information that gives you the rabbit hole to go down. Okay? Okay. I love you all, and I'll see you sometime between 7 and 8. And if enough of you come back on, Miss MJ, I hope to see you there. And think of more questions to ask me to you navigate the chat very nicely. So take what I just have said in the last 35 minutes and, and any other thing that I might have said that scratches your interest, and bring it forth to the chat so we can develop it. Because when I'm just talking, man, I'm just I'm all over the place, the stream of consciousness. It's very good when you guys give me questions to ask. So Terence McKenna, right? Bring some interesting, what you think of Terence McKenna, what you like about Terence, what you don't like about Terence, what resonates in you from what Terence McKenna says. I would love, MJ, if you would bring that back for tonight's chat. So this was just a little, hey, and go tell other people. Let's see how many people we can get on the chat. Okay, I love you, baby. And I love you all, and I'll talk to you later. Like I said, between 7 and 8, I'll be back. Okay? But I'm getting hungry, and I'm going to go have din din. I made a nice stew.